So grateful for the creativity and the creative genius of Amy Steinberg's music, and for the creativity and creative genius of our musicians making it their own and bringing it to life right here, yes? Oh. I mean, we get to witness what we just heard about in that reading every Sunday. The flow of creativity coming through all the artists. You can look around this room, you know? The flow of the creativity that comes through the artistry of those in that flow. So we are wrapping up this series called Surrender into Oneness. And to recap, I thought instead of me sharing what I've been sharing the past few weeks, as such, Google and its brilliant algorithms showed me this video the other day, and it was I was like, what? Okay. So we're going to have a little movie day to start with, and the other reason I love this is because it's not just words, it's the pictures and the words, and we all learn differently, right? So maybe this will help lock it in a new way for you. So as soon as you're ready back there, we can go ahead and...
It can be translated as non-action, effortless action, or the paradoxical action of non-action. Wu Wei is multifaceted. There are different forms of non-action. Lao Tzu's writings embody Wu Wei. He teaches softness over hardness, allowing over forcing, and flowing along over striving. He wants us to stop trying so hard, stop pushing beyond nature's limits, and use the Tao to our advantage by going along with it instead of fighting it. Practicing Wu Wei aligns us with the Tao. Take, for example, the idea of non-intervention. Lao Tzu speaks about this concept, which particularly applies to the ruler. Instead of ruling by trying to control and dominate, a ruler should trust and allow as many processes as possible without unnecessary intervention. The world and its people are largely self-governing. If he intervenes too much, he disrupts the natural flow, and things only worsen. We can also see this with overly controlling managers. Their efforts may stem from a desire to do well, but their constant meddling is often counterproductive. Lao Tzu wrote that great leaders lead from a place of non-action. They only act when necessary. They trust in the process. They let nature do its work. Many problems simply solve themselves. Many things fall into place without intervening. Imagine how much time and energy such an attitude saves. Lao Tzu wrote, "Do you want to rule the world and control it? I don't think it can ever be done. The world is a sacred vessel, and it cannot be controlled. You will only make it worse if you try. It may slip through your fingers and disappear." End quote. Non-action also shines through when Lao Tzu talks about the futility of fixed knowledge and rigid moral codes. We often try to be good based on predetermined ideas of goodness, or achieve success as societal standards dictate. But what are goodness and success really? Can we, for example, speak of definitive concepts of good and evil in a complex and ever-changing universe? Trying to impose good on the world often makes things worse. Alan Watts, a fervent scholar of Taoism, once pointed out that the goody-goodies of society are the biggest troublemakers. Their must-save-the-world attitude often disrupts the natural course, simply because they seek to enforce artificial ideas on what's good and evil, which may not align with the nuanced realities of life. Another form of Wu Wei is the idea of effortless action, also called being in the zone, referring to a free-flowing spontaneity during which one merges with the act. Dr. Wui Lin Chong, philosopher and sinologist, explains her interpretation in a Dutch book about Taoist philosophy, emphasizing the element of emptiness or openness. She describes the essence of practicing Wu Wei as follows, and I quote, "And so the whole practitioner is able to, from the clarity of his egoless center, observe all relevant forces in a certain situation in their being, undistorted, so that he can respond to them flawlessly." End quote. From this viewpoint, Wu Wei is not just about letting go, going along with the flow of nature, allowing the universe to do its job. It's a much bolder move, for which we need a lot of courage. we must be brave enough to escape our intellectual prisons of assumptions, concepts, and categories and engage with the world as it presents itself. The sage must become what Lao Tzu called an uncarved block, which is a simpler, undistorted state of being. As uncarved blocks, we can engage in what Dr. Wei Lin Chong describes as this ultimate receptive and responsive way of action from a crystal clear openness in yourself, one with the breathing of the cosmos. So how does this work in practice? The importance of escaping our intellectual prisons is especially true for effortless action. In the flow state, we tend to experience intense and focused concentration on the present moment, loss of reflective self-consciousness, a merging of action and awareness, and even an altered sense of time. It's like the dancer becomes the dance, the poet the poem, and the singer the song. In his biography, retired professional basketball player Bill Russell wrote, "It was almost as if we were playing in slow motion. During those spells, I could almost sense how the next play would develop and where the next shot would be taken." End quote. How do we reach this flow state? Perhaps a better question is, what stops us from reaching it? Let's take a look at the word try for a moment. To try means making an attempt or effort to
in school spelled SKOOL. And so check that out. So flow state. Surrender is not giving up. It's giving over to the infinite within, right? That is that flow state, or what we may call being in the zone. As they mention, like basketball players talk about being in the zone. You're not thinking about your every move and calculating it. You're just in the flow of life. Musicians, when they're playing a song, you get to a certain point where you open up to that flow and you're not thinking, this chord, that chord, this chord, that chord. It's flowing through you. So how can we look at this idea and apply it to our everyday life? Because the truth is, that is our natural state. Being at one with the Tao, with the way, with life, with God, with source energy. All that we desire is within us. And what stops us is our own monkey mind, or thoughts, that what we've been talking about this month, our ego mind, right? Those kind of collection of thoughts, those patterns of doubt, of self-sabotage, of separation, of not good enough, that part of the ego that would tell us either that we're not good enough or we're the best and we're the right and we're the only one that can do it, right? It plays us both ways, don't be fooled. Yet when we are truly present to the flow of life, when we are tuned in and tapped in to that source, to that higher self, life begins to flow with a lot more ease. And it doesn't mean there's not going to be bumps along the way, but just like a river, we can flow more easily around those obstacles or challenges when we are in this state of allowing, of surrender, and of presence. So what if spiritual growth was actually about letting go and not attaining something? What if true spiritual awakening was about releasing and shedding all that we are not, as opposed to trying to get something or achieve something? Because what that does, that state of mind of thinking that enlightenment is something that we must achieve, is it creates separation, right? It makes us think that who and where we are right now isn't already inherently perfect. But what we teach here, and what Ernest Holmes reminds us in this Science of Mind philosophy, is that we are inherently whole. And we are connected with all. And therefore, the joy and the wisdom and the love and the peace is already right here, is who we are. So, if we move from life with this premise that all that we desire is within, it is already who we are, the work then becomes to notice all of the gunk and the blocks that we have put between us and our good, right? Or our truth, our desires. And along our life's journey, our soul's perfectly imperfect journey of evolution, we pick things up. And these ideas, these negative beliefs like self-doubt, or call them karmic blocks, these limiting ideas, and from various experiences in our life, become like congealed gunk, right? Blocking that flow of life through us. Think of it this way. Imagine you're eating something and it makes you sick. You have an extreme allergy aversion to this particular food. So you could choose to keep eating it and maybe look out there for some kind of medication or something that might help relieve those symptoms. You could be content with just feeling bad and keep eating that thing. Or you could just stop eating the thing that makes you sick, right? So similarly, in our spiritual growth and our healing, it requires dissolving those energetic blocks and that gunk by stop feeding it with the negative thoughts and the thoughts that continue to enhance those old beliefs that no longer serve the truth of who we are. The tendency of the ego mind is to look for something out there to make us better because it believes that right here, right now is not enough or we are not okay. And so, when we look out there for love, for joy, for happiness, for inspiration, it is a never-ending journey. We will never be fulfilled or satisfied because what we are looking for is right here. And we don't need to add anything or get anything from out there. We simply need to remove the blocks and the blinders and the obstacles and the junk that is preventing us from seeing that truth. If you are not feeling the love and the abundance or the peace and the joy that you desire, it's not because you somehow are born inherently wrong or broken or without the ability to love or be creative. No. It's just that you are eating something, taking a bite of that poisonous apple, and believing that is your truth. It's like eating something that's not good for you. That doesn't mean that when you eat something and it makes you sick, that you are inherently sick. In fact, it's the exact opposite, right? Like you are inherently whole and healthy. You take in, you consume something, follow the metaphor here, you consume something that your body has a reaction to, and you temporarily feel sick or reject it. But in that moment, we could choose to believe that that is who we are and get stuck in that sickness. The same thing happens in our mind. When we forget that those experiences are temporary, the pain and the suffering and the doubt, and we start to believe that that's who we are, and then that we have to go out there searching for the truth, we're working at it all backwards. And we're going to be spending so much energy to feel that contentment. Or you could stop consuming the poisonous apple. And I know it sounds easy. And like, well, yeah. It takes, like that video showed, do you remember that graphic, right, of that person emerging from this like dark, all these people and things like grabbing at it, and it's like a little crack coming out and trying to emerge from the grips of the doubt and the ego mind. It's so pervasive in our culture, the messages of you're not good enough, you need this product to make you look good, you need this to feel good about yourself, you need this perfect relationship, and it must look like this to feel complete, right? We hear it in the songs, in the movies, in the ads, in our collective conversation. So no wonder something as simple as like stop eating and consuming the poison apple yet is a little bit more difficult, because it takes conscious awareness in each moment, because it's so pervasive. And that's our work, to remember the truth of who we are. Think about that beautiful stone, and instead of having to become something that it's not, what the artist does with that beautiful stone, the marble, what it is it chisels away. It chisels away everything on this block that is not the image that the artist is creating. And what becomes of that marble, that stone, is an amazing statue that the artist, in that flow state, revealed. We are inherently whole and perfect. All that we desire is within. The process of awakening, if you want to call it that, is recognizing and then choosing not to engage with, consume, take in any of those ideas or thoughts that do not resonate with the wholeness of the truth of God, of the universe, of who we are. This is what the Buddha described as nirvana, that state of having no blocks or obstacles and having that experience of flow, of pure bliss, right? This is what Jesus described when he said we must die to be reborn. Meaning we must die to the parts of ourselves that is blocking that flow in order to awaken to the joy and the wholeness and the peace within. That is always there, waiting to be fully experienced through us, as us. So think again of that river, that beautiful river flowing. And then there is a dam, right? We build a dam. Now, this doesn't mean that there is something bad or wrong with the river, because it's no longer flowing past this point, right? If there is an energetic block, it will stop the flow. But the river is still there, waiting to flow through you. Spirit is who you are. It's not giving up on you. It's there waiting to flow. But these blocks come from perhaps core wounds or traumas that then we have created various defense mechanisms to keep us safe. And this is all the ego part of the mind that is, to an extent, perhaps healthy when we were younger, and yet as we grow and mature, we can comfort that young inner child and let it know that We don't need those blocks anymore, right? We don't need to be so rigid with this idea or boundary to stay safe. We can begin to open up to the flow and to trust the infinite spirit of life, to trust love, and to allow those blocks to dissolve. When we truly get this, not just intellectually, right? I think, we can hear the metaphors and the ideas and be like, yeah, I get that. But as a lived experience, and not just a spiritual platitude, that is how we begin to let things flow with ease, all right? That it has to move from an intellectual experience or awareness or idea into an integrated reality in our life. And it starts by a little willingness, just a little willingness to become awake and aware, to pay attention, and to stop consuming that poisonous apple. So how do we give over to the infinite within? First, we must slow down, listen, and begin to cultivate a relationship with the divine of our own being. And then notice where, in what moments or relationships or events in your life are those obstacles, blocks coming up. When are we feeling that not good enough, that trigger? And then notice it. As soon as we notice it and name it, it no longer has the power. Once we experience something and we can identify, oh, that was a trigger. I was not in my right mind when I responded in that way. And as soon as we realize that, it's gone. That's all we have to do. But what do we often do? Beat ourselves up. Feel bad. Wallow in it. La, 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 la. Right, just let it go. Forgive yourself. Move on. Stop eating the apple. If you notice that you are in a place of lack in some way, then perhaps you are believing in false evidence appearing real, right? That an acronym for fear. Fear. And all you have to do is call it out. Notice it. Say, oh, that no longer has any power over me, and allow it to dissolve back to the nothingness from which it came. So we're going to notice. We're going to stay awake and aware. We're going to notice. We're going to name it for what it is. Poisonous apple, whatever you want to say. You're walking through your world. You're like, oh, I feel, that's a poisonous apple. I'm not going to consume that anymore. And then realign with your truth and open up to the flow. And that is how we allow grace to set us free. To die to our old habits and patterns that no longer serve us, and to step into our inherent power and purpose. Awareness is key. So that is our practice this week. Are you willing? Even just a little bit? All right. Let's take that into prayer. So what I know right here, right now, is there is an infinite source of potential. This life source energy that is wholeness, that is peace, that is joy, that is love, that is who I am. I know and recognize that this one life is living and moving and having its very being in, as, and through me. So I'm so grateful to speak this word now from this place of oneness, knowing that I am in the flow. That I choose this day to stay awake and aware, to no longer consume the poisonous ideas of lack or separation, of doubt, of limitation, And I choose today and in this moment forward and in every eternal now moment to allow grace and love to wash over me, to easily come right back to my center, that place in space where love resides, and to let love lead the way, knowing that any old patterns or false identifications dissolve back to the nothingness from which they came. For there is only one life, one truth, one spirit living as me, and I awaken to this flow now, and I allow it to live me. Life is living me now. I surrender my ego's desire to control, and I allow spirit to have its way. And for this, I am so grateful. So grateful. As I release this word now into the divine activity of life itself, knowing it is done and it is so. I affirm, and so it is.